Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Amber, and I will be your host today. I appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. I know your schedules can be really busy, so we do appreciate your time. I'm going to give a few minutes for a few people to continue to connect, and during that time, just going to go over a few housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar, so if you have to step away early or you want to share it with someone, we will be sending that recording out shortly after the webinar is over today. We'll also be including the slides with that email. Additionally, if you have any questions during the webinar today, there is a chat box down below, and you can type your questions in there. I will try to get to them as I see them, but I will have a minute at the end, or a few minutes at the end, to cover those questions if I don't get to them during the webinar today. Also, if at any time you get disconnected from the webinar, you can just click on that link to get yourself reconnected. So again, my name is Amber, and I will be your host today. Just a little bit about myself. I've spent the last 15 plus years now in secondary and post-secondary education, helping individuals, helping students meet their goals and go over the barriers to really help them succeed. And Play Attention's been an integral part of that. I've also spent some time in grant writing to help fund some of those programs as well. So always an important piece when we talk about that going through. But today we're going to talk about kindness and using self-compassion to build empathy for others. You know, kindness is such an important topic, whether we're talking about kindness for children or kindness for adults. Really, as humans, kindness is so beneficial for us in our day-to-day, and it means so much. And it's such a little piece for us to do to make someone's day. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I loved this quote as I was kind of putting things together for you all today. I just loved this, and I wanted to share it all. Kindness, it costs nothing, but it means everything. I'm going to read that again because it's so powerful. Just a few words, it's so powerful. Kindness, it costs nothing, but it means everything. You know, I'm sure you've seen this on the internet where, you know, just saying hi to somebody or smiling at them can make their day. You don't know what they're going through in that day, and so just that small act of kindness can be so very important in their day. And it really doesn't cost us anything. We can do some things that maybe cost us a little bit, but really there are so many different acts of kindness and empathy that we can show for individuals day in and day out, and it truly doesn't cost anything. This week, for those of you who have been joining us while we've been going through the virtual summer camp, kindness is our topic this week. So there are a lot of great things that we're sharing this week on kindness and the benefits and how we can be kind to one another. So if you are involved in our virtual summer camp and you haven't checked out week 5, go ahead and check it out. There's a lot of great activities and some great videos there as well. For those of you who are new to Play Attention and you're thinking, what the heck is the virtual summer camp? For the last 5 weeks, we hosted a free virtual summer camp for adults and children, providing activities and different topics to really help kind of get through the summer. We know a lot of summer camps have been canceled, and so just really providing some great content, some great activities. If you haven't been involved in our summer camp and you're still interested, all of our previous weeks, all of that content is still available. So if you type in virtual summer camp in the chat box, we'll make sure that you get connected to that information after the webinar is over today. So what we're going to be talking about today is what is kindness, what is empathy. We're going to be putting some definitions, some context around that, how kindness affects relationships, really how that can make or break our relationship, and then ways to grow it. There are so many great ways. I'm going to share 5 today, and again, these slides will be available when we are done today, and so we will send those out via email with the recording so you can take a look at those. So if you want to take notes, great, but if you want to just listen and take it all in, you will be receiving these slides later. So what is kindness? What does that mean? We all know the word, we've heard it before, but what exactly does kindness mean? It's the quality of being friendly, being generous, and being considerate. So a lot of different things there. So kindness, as I mentioned, there are so many things we can do to be kind, because we're being friendly, we're being generous, and we're being considerate to others. So again, these are things that children can do, but these are things that adults can do as well. And it's so important as adults that we do them also, because we want to mirror that behavior for our children. It's so important for us for them to see us doing it as well, because so many, especially younger kids, they really are, reciprocating and doing what you are doing. And so really mirroring that activity or those behaviors. I also found this as well, and I wanted to share it with you as we go through today, because I found it really important also. This was a quote from Project Kindness, okay? And so if you go to Project Kindness, they have a website, a blog. For me, kindness is giving people a chance before you judge them or treat them differently. Kindness is seeing something good in everyone, even if it's just a small thing. Kindness is trying to understand somebody else's situation before your own. Kindness is a quicker way to make change. There are so many fabulous things there that Julia typed that are just so indicative to kindness. Number one, small things, seeing something small, not judging individuals, trying to understand their point of view. That's part of that empathy, just being able to put yourself in their shoes, and we're going to talk about that. And then it makes change faster. When we can relate to other people, when we can be kind to other people, that's when we start to see the change. That's when we can start bridging those gaps that we might be seeing, building those relationships as we go forward. So how can we add kindness into our life? So what are those different things that we can do day in and day out that can show that kindness to others? Say hello. It's as simple as that. Now, it's hard sometimes because a lot of places are now wearing masks. So a lot of times we say to smile and to, make a welcoming face. That's hard sometimes if we're wearing a mask, but we can still wave. We can say hello to people. We can leave a kind note for someone you care about. So, I've seen people, and we've done this in my house as well, but leave a note on the mirror, whether you actually write it with mirror markers or if you actually put a little Post-it note up there. This is especially important if your schedules kind of overlap with individuals and you don't always see them as much, or maybe somebody's gone before you're up in the morning, or they're not home from work until after you've gone to bed. Write a little note, put a note on the fridge. We also have a whiteboard at our house, and not only is the whiteboard there to remind everybody of their chores and to remind me what I need to get at the grocery store, but it's a great opportunity and a place where everybody's familiar with, where we can write kind notes to each other, because that does really change your mindset. We're going to talk about some of that. So a lot, those things that I just mentioned, those are all free, right? We can do all of those without any cost, or you could pay for somebody's coffee. I don't know if you've ever had something paid for you at the grocery store or at a coffee shop, but it makes your day. Even $2 that somebody's thinking about you and paying it forward, because then more likely you are to pay it forward. So not only are you receiving something that's making you happy, you feel like you want to reciprocate it to someone else. So really doing that, a small thing like that. Giving praise to one another. This is so important. Here at Play Attention, we work with a lot of individuals that are struggling with executive function, that are struggling with attention difficulties, that may be struggling with, autism and learning disabilities. And so often we're focused on what they need to correct, right? What you didn't do correctly, what we need to build, but we also need to praise them for what they're doing well. This is so important, whether we're a parent, whether we're a child, whether we're a teacher, whether we're an employee, a boss, but really telling individuals what they're doing well and what successes they have. That is so powerful as we go forward. It is important for us to build on those areas that we need to build on, but we always need to know what we're doing well. That's going to help us stay positive and push towards those things that we need to build, knowing that we do have some things that we're doing very well. So important across the board to give that praise to each other. Share tips. You can do this online. You can do this with social media. You can do it with friends. Sharing tips. Oh, I read this great article about this. It might be helpful helpful for you? Oh, I tried this new product. It's really great. You know, they talk about the best type of marketing is word of mouth. And it is. It's sharing tips, sharing things. You're more likely to try something or learn something or be open-minded to a new process if you trust somebody that's giving you that information. So share things with individuals. Share books. I don't know if you've ever done this, but if I've read a really good book, I like to share it with other people. And not even if they want to keep it and share it with someone else, or keep it and they don't always have to give it back. I love to do that because that's a great way for me to share something that was valuable for me to someone else. Hold the door for someone. So right now, while we are trying to social distance and things like that, a simple thing of holding the door for somebody while they're coming in, if you see that they have their hands full, opening the door for them, just little things like that are such a big impact, and those are all random acts of kindness. So why is this important? Why does it matter if I hold the door for someone? Why does it matter if I pay for someone's coffee? How does that affect me? You know, oftentimes we have a tendency to be that way in our society is, what is in it for me? What benefit am I going to get out of it? And you are going to get a benefit, actually, because research shows that it creates a positive impact on you. If you are actually being the one that's doing the random act of kindness, research shows that has a positive impact on you. Not only does it have a positive impact on your outlook and your well-being, but it has a positive impact on your heart. It has a positive impact on your brain. It lowers the aging process, and it builds better relationships. And when we have better relationships, that relieves stress, that relieves anxiety, and we know when we can reduce stress and we can reduce anxiety, that has a lot of health benefits as well. So research is showing that when we're kind, we are actually physiologically changing ourselves. We're changing our brain, we're changing our heart for the better. We're receiving benefits from that it's almost like an endorphin, right? An endorphin, and Mr. Freer, we posted a video from him earlier this week on social media on Facebook about, the changes in the brain and the way that it changes your heart and how it's beneficial for our health to be able to do these things. And so, as I mentioned, those who demonstrate goodness report increased happiness, healthier hearts, slower aging, better relationships. Even if you can take only one of those out of the 4, that is a win, right? If you can get 2 out of the 4, if you can get 4 out of the 4, those are so beneficial for you. It also has an impact on the person receiving the gesture. So not only are you having an impact, they are as well. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, sometimes when we are nice to somebody, we don't understand what they're going through in their day. Maybe that smile, maybe that hello was what they needed to continue to move on. We don't know what's going on in strangers' life day in and day out. And so by being kind to them, that can mean so much. And so it has a positive outcome on them. And the more we do it, the more we practice it, the more of a habit it becomes. So when we are kind and we do it often and we're consistent with it, it becomes a habit and it becomes second nature to us. And we're able to do that continuously over and over and over again. And then we're always receiving those benefits. Oops, went too far. So what is empathy? So that's kind of kindness, just in a nutshell, what that looks like, things that we can do, reasons why we want to do it. But we also wanted to talk about empathy, because empathy and kindness really go hand in hand. We can do acts of kindness that are beneficial for individuals, but we want to have empathy as well. And really when I say empathy, what I mean by that is the ability to understand and share someone else's feelings. Not to give them a solution, not to fix their problem, but to be able to put yourself in their shoes and really understand their feelings, because that can really change the outlook. That can change the conversation. That can change the relationship. This is another thing I found that was really, important when I was looking through, pulling things together for the webinar, is empathy works so well because it doesn't require a solution. It only requires understanding. So it doesn't require us to put a lot of things together and provide solutions for them and say, okay, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. And have you tried this? It only it only requires understanding. It only requires compassion. It only requires listening, and actively listening, not listening while I'm on my phone, truly listening to that person and really putting yourself into their shoes. So how can we show empathy? What kinds of things can we do in our day-to-day life that shows that we have empathy for others? And this is great, especially when we're working with little kids. Obviously, adults, this is important for us as well, but this is also important for children, for us to teach them empathy. And how can we show them, how can we mirror that behavior so they're able to do that as well? We can listen. So I mentioned that in the earlier slide, just listening, and not listening with a solution, not listening and thinking about what you're going to say next, but truly listening to what that individual has to say, putting everything down. You know, we talk about that when we talk about workplace tools in the classroom, and one of those tools is to truly listen. When somebody comes to listen or to talk to you, to either talk about a solution they have, talk about an issue that they have, talk about an idea that they have, to put everything down, to not answer your phone, to not pick your phone up, to not be reading something, to put everything down and to 100% focus and listen on what they have to say. Connect with their feelings. So this is putting yourself into their shoes. And it's hard sometimes for us to do that because as humans, we have, judgments that come up, we have preconceived notions that come up, but sometimes we have to try to put those aside. I've heard this quote several times, and it's the first thing that pops into my head is my default, but the second thing that pops into my head is how I truly want to feel. So if you automatically, when somebody starts talking about something and you think, well, that's not how I would do it, that's your first reaction, but you need to let that go. And then you need to have that compassion and open your mind, open your heart to what they have to say. Acknowledge their pain. We have to acknowledge that they are feeling pain. Now, it might not be something that causes us pain, and it might be something that we've gone through and the pain didn't seem that much for us. But again, we need to put ourselves into their shoes, and we don't always experience things that as other individuals experience them. So we need to acknowledge that the pain is there for them, and we need to listen. Again, listening is going to be the core principle across the board. And then we need to show them unconditional love. If it's a coworker and you're like, well, I really don't want to love them, that's fine. We can also offer them unconditional support, right? We need to show them that we don't have strings attached, that we're there, we're listening. Once that we have that empathy and we can understand that, then we can go to, okay, how do we move to the next piece? Do we need to create some solutions? Do we need to go back to the drawing board? Do we need to make some changes? What does that look like? But before we can move forward, we have to have that empathy and we have to have that understanding before we can even think about a solution and moving forward. So what are some ways that why is empathy important to me? Why is it important for me to show this, to feel this, to have my child mirror this? Because you're going to have a better understanding of what that other person feels. So instead of thinking, why do they keep getting this wrong? Why can't they get this right? We understand that there's more than them just not picking up that task. There's more than them just not being able to get to work on time, right? There's something else there, and now we can understand that. That doesn't mean that it's acceptable for someone to always be late for school and someone to always be late to work, but we have to understand how that person is feeling, and we have to put ourselves in their shoes to see that piece first. Then once we can see that, now we can start to respond appropriately to the situation. Do they need additional support? Okay, so maybe it's my child and they're struggling with math and they can't get through it and they're really, they're really struggling. And then I come to find out as I start to listen that they're seeing numbers differently and maybe they're struggling with dyslexia. So now that I understand that, we can start putting pieces together and come up with an appropriate response. But until I just think that, oh, you're just not doing it because you don't want to do it, you'd rather just play your video games and all those pieces, when I can start to listen and really have empathy for the struggle that they're having happening, then we can start having those appropriate conversations and appropriately responding to the solution that's needed. We're fulfilling a basic human need of being understood. Now, there is a little hand at the bottom of the next to the chat box, and I want you to raise your hand if you've ever been misunderstood. All you have to do is raise your hand. I'm going to wait a couple minutes for that, for everybody to raise their hand, because honestly, every single one of us can raise our hand. I know I've been misunderstood. I know, I know everyone I know has been misunderstood. And yes, I'm seeing hands continuously go up, hands go up, hands go up. So thank you for humoring me in that. And when you were misunderstood, how did you feel? Did you feel hurt? Did you feel frustrated? Did you feel angry? Did you have some kind of emotional response? Did you get defensive? That's such a common feeling when we're misunderstood. And when we are misunderstood, we have a breakdown in communications. And so when we are able to listen, when we're able to show empathy for individuals, we're able to have that understanding better. We don't have that breakdown that we can often have in that communication piece because we're understanding where they are coming from. That doesn't mean we're going to agree, right? I'm not saying that because you're empathetic to them, you agree to everything that's happening. No, sometimes we have to put tools in place to help with that solution. But until I can understand why they are there, why this is happening, and really feel what they're feeling, we're not going to get there. They're not going to be understood. So we have to get to that place first. So what are some ways, or how can kindness affect relationships? So now what I want to talk about is, why do we want to be empathetic? Why do we want to be kind? How does that affect our relationships specifically? What do we see in those relationships? Because that's one of the biggest things. When we are kind, when we have empathy for others, we build relationships. And when we build relationships, we have more success in our life. We have less stress in our life. We have less anxiety in our life because we are having that ability to have that strong, positive relationships because we have open communication, we're listening, we're understanding the other individual. So how does kindness, how does empathy affect those relationships? People feel more understood and there's more understanding. Because when we are understood, we feel like we have a weight lifted off us. If you're struggling with something and someone says, "You know what, I'm really sorry you're feeling that. I completely understand why X would happen because of the way you're feeling." It's almost like a weight is lifted off your shoulders. That anxiety starts to melt away. That stress starts to melt away. And so being more understood and feeling more understood and having understanding is very helpful. People feel compassion. They now have compassion for one another. And when we have compassion for each other, again, change can happen. Things can move forward. There's more of a commitment. When I'm being understood and I feel like somebody truly has my best interests, I'm going to be more committed to that individual. I'm going to go the extra mile. And this is so important when we're talking about an employer and an employee relationship as well, not just a parent-child. I mean, it's obviously very important for a parent and child to have that commitment, to have that understanding. But when we are talking about in an adult area and we're talking about employee, employer, when your employer is kind to you, when they're understanding to you, when they show you that empathy, you're going to have a stronger commitment for that company, for that product. Now, again, that doesn't mean, I'm not saying that your employer should say, "Oh yeah, you can be late to work every day." That's not a problem. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is when they understand you and they work to find solutions that are going to be effective for you and what you're struggling with, that's when we're going to see that commitment. That's where that's going to build that relationship. Motivation. So commitment and motivation go hand in hand. I'm more motivated to go out. I'm more motivated to make sure my job is done. I'm more motivated. Same when you're talking about parent-child, teacher-child, whatever. When they know that you have their best interests, again, they're going to work harder. They're going to try. They're going to take those tools and they're going to make them effective for themselves. You're going to have improved communication. And again, when you have improved communication, you have that stronger bond. You have that ability to communicate your point. Again, communication doesn't always mean everybody agrees. You can agree to disagree. However, you can have that open and very honest conversation without having all of that emotional turmoil in there, because you have empathy for what they have to say, and you're going to become more effective. When you have empathy and when you have kindness in your relationship, you're going to have these things, as I've mentioned. You're going to have the commitment, the motivation, you're being more understood, compassion. That makes you more effective in your job. It makes you more effective at home. It makes you more effective in your everyday. And so it's not only going to help your brain, it's not only going to help your heart and anti-aging, but it's also going to help us be more effective in our day-to-day. You know, another thing I like to share is, I've heard this before, is don't raise your voice, strengthen your words, right? We want to have that power to be able to effectively communicate without all of that emotion. And we can do that by kindness and strengthening empathy as we move forward. So what are some ways that we can show kindness in a relationship? Okay, so if we're talking specifically about a relationship, and whether it's an employee and employer, a child, a parent, two children, siblings, whatever the case, this is for two human beings, right? These are effective ways that we can show kindness and empathy in our everyday. And there's no cost to any of these skills. Now, if some of these skills you're like, oh, I struggle a little bit, we're going to talk about how to build those skills up. Because sometimes paying attention can be difficult. Sometimes, not blaming can be difficult, right? So some of these can be really, really difficult for us, especially if it's coming from an emotionally charged place. But we can work on those. We can build those different areas, those cognitive skills, to really help us be able to be effective in doing these things. And we'll talk about how do we do that. But we can just simply pay attention. Again, like I mentioned, it's kind of like a broken record, but it's so important. When someone is speaking to you, you put things down. You pay attention to strictly what they're saying and what they need. And if you don't have time at the moment, if you cannot give them 100%, then you need to let them know, I'm sorry, this isn't a good time, but can you give me 10 minutes, right? If you give me 10 minutes, I can give you undivided attention. Communicate effectively. So again, oftentimes if we're talking about a sensitive subject, right? If we're talking about maybe a parent-teen relationship and we're trying to come up with a solution for something, even an employee-employer, a parent, an adult child, and a parent, right? How do we communicate effectively when there are some very emotionally charged topics? We select a time. Not in the moment. We're not going to be able to effectively communicate in that moment, right? So we need to be outside of that moment, and we need to say, okay, I'd really like to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. And can we meet Saturday morning? And can we just talk about A and B, right? I'd really like to talk about these two things. And that way you're aware, you know it's coming, and you can go to a neutral place, right? And you can talk about it, and you can have that open conversation, that open communication. So that's really important. Remain kind even during conflict. It's so important. We can never take our words back, right? Our words, once they're out, and people are always going to remember them. And so it's very important for us to remain kind even during conflict. If things aren't being resolved, then that's when we take a step back before we say something. This is important too in not only verbal, but written communication. So I have a policy that if something is frustrating to me, whether it's personal or work related, if I want to reply via email, I wait 24 hours, okay? If I can at all possibly wait 24 hours, because I'm a lot more effective in my communication when I can take that time, really reflect, and oftentimes I'll type it out right away. I'll type it out, but I won't send it. I'll put it away. I'll put it in my drafts folder. And the way you don't accidentally send that is you don't put any to in your address, so you don't accidentally send it. But you type it out, and then you take whether it's 12 hours, 24 hours, and you take a look at it again. And it's coming from a non-emotionally charged place now, and now you can make those adjustments and you can be very effective. And you can still have kindness, right? You can still have kindness when you're asking for either change or you're asking for why this happened, an explanation, but it takes that emotion out of it. So if anytime we can avoid that, that's really important for us to kind of take a step back. And obviously sometimes that can't always happen, but if we can even remove ourselves for 10, 15 minutes from the situation and then come back, we're going to be more effective in that conflict, and something's not going to be said that's unkind or an action that's unkind. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is hard. It really is a hard thing because we have to let things go, but it is really important for that relationship and that kindness to be strong. Being responsible. So being responsible for my actions. This is harder when we're talking about children because children are still learning how to be responsible. They're not quite they can't fully grasp everything that is going on. And so sometimes, again, we need to teach them what is responsible. What does that mean? What consequences do our words have? What consequences do our actions have? Not blaming. When we're in the heat of the moment, when we start blaming, again, we're going back to that being unkind. And oftentimes we can, at the heat of the moment, we don't want to take responsibility. We don't want to have that. And so we're going to easily blame. But sometimes both parties have a little responsibility in that, a little bit of blame in that. And so being able to remove ourselves. Appreciation, again, it goes back to saying kind things. Having appreciation when somebody does something for you, to thank them. Don't take it for granted. Thank them and let them know you appreciate the additional things that they did. Being positive. We've talked a lot this week, or these 5 weeks in our virtual summer camp. We've talked about morning meditation. We've talked about positive affirmations. We've talked about slowing your morning down. And all of that relates, and all of that helps us build a more positive outlook. When we get up and we rush and we're going from here to here to here, it's very easy to be negative. It's very easy to just be in that rush mindset where I'm just trying to get all of these things done. But when we take a step back and have that gratitude, have that mindfulness, have that positive outlook, whether it's a positive affirmation, some gratitude statements, whatever that looks like, that can be really effective for us, because when we start out positive, it's easier to stay positive the rest of the day. When we start out negative, we're already behind the 8 ball, if you will, to get to that positive. So that's another thing that our camp has had. And like I said, our camp has been for both children and adults. So again, something for everyone. And so there's some really great tips in there about slowing your morning down, starting out your morning positive, ending your night positive as well. And you're more likely to sleep well when we end our night positive and we kind of reflect and we let things go. We sleep better, and then it's easier for us to start our morning positive. So lots of great information. So again, if you haven't been involved in our virtual summer camp, let us know and we'll get that information for you. And then practicing empathy. So all of these are kind of intertwined. That's why I really wanted to talk about kindness and empathy together, because when we have both, we are more effective. We're building those relationships as we're going forward. So what are 5 ways? So, okay, Amber, great. You gave us some tips. You gave us but how can we grow that? How can we show? How can we mirror it? What can we do? How can we teach our children? What can I use in the workplace? Maybe I'm a manager. What does that look like? How can I be beneficial for that going forward? So number 1, build your attention. So, we talk a lot about attention here at Play Attention, and because attention is rooted in everything. When we want that brain change, when we want our brains to change and we want to function differently, we have to have that attention. It has to be there. That's the cornerstone that we need. We need to be able to connect with individuals, and we need to be attentive. We need to be able to stay focused, engaged. So not only do we need to have that attention and that engagement, we need to stay there, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about attention, initially, we can focus and no problem, but it's harder for us to sustain that, especially if we have a lot of things going on in our mind, especially if we're coming from a place of non-empathy and we think, oh my goodness, they're just being silly, right? And that's when we need to back all of that off, and then we need to go in with that open-minded attention and being able to build that and really have that attention for them. And so steps for that: remove things that are in your hands right now, right? Move those away. Pay attention to their face, watch them. Don't think about what you're going to say. Don't be like, but this. You're going to have time to say what you need to say. And sometimes for you to be effectively listening and effectively focused and attentive, maybe you need to take notes on what they're saying, right? And say, oh, could you hold on 1 second? I just want to take a note of that, and then move on. So that's number one, is we want to build that attention. We want it to be rooted in that attentional foundation. We also want to improve our nonverbal communication. Okay, so verbal communication is very important, right? But so is nonverbal communication. What our bodies say sometimes is louder than what our mouths can say. Okay, and so it's very important for us to be very aware of what nonverbal communication we are giving off. Additionally, we also need to learn and understand social cues. So if I'm talking and maybe I'm talking about something that is making somebody uncomfortable, maybe somebody's very upset and they need my empathy because they're dealing with a much bigger situation than we're talking about right now. Being able to read that nonverbal social cue, seeing that expression and really understanding, oh, okay, well, I need to shift gears. I need to make sure I address that person in private, something like that. Building our positive nonverbal communication. So starting to be aware, and maybe you need to have a partner, and whether you have a partner at work or a partner at home, whatever that looks like, but say, if I start to give a face, or if my body language starts to kind of be, negative, or kind of give off that kind of vibe, can you let me know? Because sometimes we're not aware of that. Sometimes we have those nonverbal communication that's happening that we're not even aware of, or if we're aware of it, we don't understand how often it happens. So having that partner help us, and not being judgmental when they call us on that, right? Say, oh, I noticed, or you're doing it now, or something like that. Trying to avoid fidgeting. When we fidget, we know there's a one-to-one correlation that we're not able to fully focus and pay attention. And so we want to try to avoid doodling. We want to try to avoid fidgeting if at all possible, because when we start doing those behaviors, we're not 100% focused in on what that individual is trying to tell us. And then being aware of our posture. Again, that goes back to the nonverbal. If I'm annoyed or if I'm in a rush, that can often come off in my posture. So again, if you don't have time for that individual, make sure you have that communication and say, I just don't have time right now, but can you give me an hour? Can you give me 20 minutes? Can you give me 2 minutes to just finish up this one thing, and then you'll have my undivided attention. And that way I don't have to worry about what my posture says, because I'm in the middle of something. Okay, so that's number 2, improve your nonverbal communication. Number 3, be present and mindful. So being present and being attentive are very similar, right? But we want to be mindful as well. We want to be in that present moment. We want to be engaged. We want to be able to process everything that's happening, not thinking about dinner later, not thinking about all of the things I have to do later. And so to be more present, to be more mindful, things that we can do is avoid a wandering mind, right? Really, if you catch yourself starting to think, oh, what am I going to do later? Bring it back around, really trying to avoid that wandering mind. Now, sometimes that's hard to do because sometimes we get into that inattentive state and we're not even aware. And we're going to talk a little bit more about play attention and how kind of play attention helps with that piece, but that's one of the things we want to do. Making eye contact. So really making eye contact and focusing in on their social cues, their social expressions, things that they're saying non-verbally to you. We can do that by making eye contact. Listening fully without thinking about what you're going to say. So I've mentioned this a couple times. So often we listen and all we don't hear, we think about what we're going to say. And that's a defense mechanism often. And we need to, we're going to have the opportunity to say what we need to say, but we need to listen to individuals. We're going to be a much more effective communicator if we can listen to them and hear what they say, understand what they're saying, being empathetic to what they're saying, and not thinking about what I'm going to say next. Take time to process what individuals are communicating with you. So this, maybe you need to take notes. Maybe they tell you something major that's going on and you say, okay, I need a little time to process this, but I completely understand. I have that understanding of where you're coming from, but I just need a little bit of time to process this. Can we pick this up again tomorrow? This is important too when you're working with kiddos, because kiddos they have a harder time controlling that emotion. Especially if they're struggling with executive function, especially if they're struggling with attention difficulties. They can often really struggle with emotional regulation. So sometimes if they're letting things go, we need to maybe take a break, right? And come back to that and either let them finish and be empathetic to that, or then come back and start to kind of establish solutions together. Make them feel like they are the most important person. This is not just being empathetic, but this is being kind. Again, if you've ever talked with somebody and they have made you feel like the most important person in the room, it is an amazing feeling. I don't know if you felt that, but I have had that happen to me before, and it is so important to make people feel that way, because again, it reaches back to those things we were talking about earlier. When we're present, when we're making them feel important, they're going to be more motivated. They're going to be more committed. They're going to be kinder. It's going to be this, it's going to roll, and it's going to get stronger and stronger as we go. So being able to be more present, being more mindful for these individuals in this moment is going to help us build that kindness, help us build that empathy as we move forward. Start small. So you might be thinking, oh my gosh, this is more than I wanted to take on. This is a lot. And I understand that. That's 100% understandable as we move forward. So start small. You don't have to implement all of these things at one time. Add one thing daily, just one thing. Say, you know what? Every day I'm going to say hello to someone in the hallway, every single day. And that's all I'm going to do, right? But then you're going to do that, and you're going to realize how much that makes you feel, how good that makes you feel, and you're going to want to do it more and more and more. But even just starting with one thing, and that's going to start to do that moving forward. Maybe you leave a note for someone new every single day, and you just do that every day, and you're going to see how that's going to change you, change your outlook, change how you feel, and then you're going to want to do more. Follow a 30-day kindness calendar. So there are so many random acts of kindness calendars you can find online. If you just Google kindness calendar, you can do it with your kids, you can do it yourself, but every day gives you something to do that's kind. Just one thing, and it's different every single day, but it's so fun to do that. And that might be something fun to do with your child while it's summer, doing some of those things. Start your day off with positive mindfulness and affirmations. So as I mentioned, we have some great information in our virtual summer camp about that, but you can, again, Google positive mindset and positive affirmations, and you're going to get so many. You're going to get them on yourself, how to be a better this, how to be a better that. What are those kinds of statements I can say to myself every single day? Because we do have a tendency as a society to have that really negative self-talk. So we want to flip that. We want to bring that positivity in. And so by saying affirmations, by starting out quiet and positive, it really makes an impact for your day. And then try not to rush our day. That's so hard to do sometimes as families. I know I have 2 kids, I have a full-time job, I have other commitments. And so it's so hard sometimes to not be rushing from thing to thing to thing. But we do sometimes need to take a minute, right? And really reflect on if all of those things we're doing are necessary. Or can we take out A and B and slow things down a little bit, be more kind, be more present in what's happening as we move forward. But again, starting small, one thing at a time, and then move from there. Rise above. So it's going to be, you're going to start out your day doing all the right things, right? Positive affirmations, positive, mindfulness, you make lunch the night before, and so you're ready, you have everything, and then something's going to happen in your day. Someone's going to cross your path that is going to be rude, that's going to be angry, that's going to have a viewpoint that is completely opposite of what you might think. It could be lots of different things, and you're going to need to rise above, right? We're going to need to take the high road. And how do we do that? So we can be non-judgmental, right? Again, come from a place of empathy by being non-judgmental. They're thinking that, whether you believe it's right or wrong, we are not going to put that value on them. We are going to rise above, and we're going to be non-judgmental. We're going to rise above any negative behavior. We're not going to meet negative behavior with negative behavior. It's really hard to do as well. And that's really where being mindful, taking a minute, taking deep breaths. We've done webinars in the past on mindfulness, on how to, different things that we can do every day. Maybe we need to take a deep breath. Maybe we need to remove ourselves from the situation. But rising above mindful behavior, negative behavior is so beneficial, because once we go down the negative path, nothing positive ever happens from that. Two negatives, they're not going to work together. And so we need to rise above that. Have empathy. By not being judgmental, by rising above negative behavior is going to give you that, help you practice and kind of strengthen that empathy muscle. And then when things don't go your way, do not lash out. That's why sometimes it's important to take a step back from a conversation, because it's very easy that we can go down that rabbit hole of lashing out and being angry and losing our temper and all of those different pieces. And so if something doesn't go our way, that's again a time where we need to take a pause, take a time out, and then move forward with either the conversation a different day, some other pieces, but being able to rise above that. And all of these are ways that, again, obviously empathy is one of them, but you're showing kindness for others. So sometimes it's not always an overt action. Sometimes kindness is not being judgmental. Sometimes it's moving away from that negative behavior and just really understanding that sometimes not doing anything or not giving the response that someone might be looking for is actually being kind in that moment. So how can play attention help? So I've talked a lot about attention. I've talked about impulse, or I haven't talked about impulse. I've talked about attention, talked about emotional behavior. I have talked about those different pieces, social cues. And when we're talking about those different things, being able to focus and pay attention, being able to read social cues, being able to control our emotions, we're talking about different types of cognitive skills that we need to have strong executive function. So executive function, really, for those who aren't familiar with the term, it's really like the CEO of your brain, right? It helps you plan, prioritize, organize. It helps you avoid procrastination. It helps you with emotional control. So there are a lot of different day-to-day things that we need to be effective and have that strong executive function. Because if we don't have that strong executive function, our day-to-day can be really inconsistent. We can struggle. We can there are a lot of things that don't work out for us. They're really those skills we need all of the time. And so play attention can help because we integrate feedback technology and cognitive skill building with behavioral shaping to build a plan that works best for each individual. So we have a program that works to really help build cognitive skills and helps with behavior shaping. And again, that's integrated with feedback technology. So we're going to use all of those pieces together to help you build attention, to help you build impulse control, which is going to help you with those emotional outbursts. We're going to help you with processing speed, which is going to help you when things get really emotional to be able to step back, take it all in, step back and really take in everything. But then once we have that impulse control, then we're able to stop and think before we react, right? It's going to help us. We have a module that works on social cues. So if we're struggling with those social expressions, or our child is struggling, they miss that nod of the head, or they miss that face where someone's upset because they've said something. If our child or someone, an adult, struggles with those, That's a cognitive skill that we build. And play attention can help because we provide one-on-one support. And so we've been doing this. We've been here for 26 years. And so really having that understanding that each individual is different and there's not a one-size-fits-all. So helping you build that plan that's going to work best for you to reach those skills that we need, and then to be empathetic, right? To be able to add kindness in our everyday, to be able to pay attention to that conversation. So my partner, my child really feels like I understand where they're coming from. And so here's just a little graphic. I'm again not touching a lot on play attention today, but again, we use our body wave armband. We integrate that feedback technology with cognitive training exercises and our behavioral shaping program. And really our behavioral shaping program is those fidgets. Getting easily frustrated, humming, doodling, those things that prevent us from being fully focused and paying attention. But we use this 3-part program together to really build those skills for each individual, because we know that with neuroplasticity, our brains are moldable and shapeable. And just like I spoke earlier, that the more we're kind, the more often we do it, we practice it, we're consistent with it. Same thing can happen with attention. Same thing can happen with impulse control. The same thing can happen with our memory. We can build those different cognitive skills by a training process and practicing them and getting feedback of our attention and strengthening those as we go through. Now, Play Attention does offer special webinars about once or twice a month. We also do consultations where we will talk with you specifically about what you're looking for and really talk to you about how that plan would work best for you. Our next webinar that we're having is on July 30th. Again, our webinars are always free. They're at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so we can always get you signed up for a Play Attention webinar if you'd like to learn more exactly about how Play Attention works and how we customize it and all of those different moving pieces. Or we can do a consultation. So if you're like, I kind of like to learn a little bit more about Play Attention, I'd like to talk with somebody. If you type in consultation in the chat box, we will schedule something that works best for your schedule. We do about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour Zoom call, and we go through Play Attention and talk about the different pieces, and you can explain a little bit more about what you're looking for, what you want to build. So definitely something we can do. So if you're interested in that, let us know. Just type in consultation. Also, we are having a second part. So this kindness webinar is in a 2-part series. This is on kindness and empathy, but we're also going to talk about we're going to talk about happiness, finding happiness in your ADHD world. And so that's going to be next Thursday, July 23rd, also at 1 o'clock. And so we are going to be offering that webinar as a follow-up to this webinar. So if you're interested in finding happiness, in your ADHD world, type in happiness webinar, and we will get you registered for that automatically. We will put you in that, and it'll be the same thing. You'll receive that email with the link, and we will get you registered for that. So if you're interested in the happiness webinar, just go ahead and type happiness in there. So the next steps. So what are next steps? So we did this webinar. We learned some things that we can do. We talked a little bit about Play Attention. What comes next? So next week we are going to be offering a free ebook on kindness, and so there will be some additional things in there that you can use to really build. So keep a lookout for that. That ebook is coming. You can schedule a consult with us, and we can talk more. You can attend a Play Attention webinar. So those are kind of the next steps that you have, that you can have going forward. Again, we're going to be sending this recording out here shortly. We're going to be sending the slides with that as well. Okay, so this is the part where I'm going to check and see if I have any questions. Also, it's an opportunity, if you haven't asked a question, please go ahead and type your question in. Also, it's a time for you to type in, if you haven't had access to our virtual summer camp and you're interested, type in virtual summer camp. If you're interested in a consultation or just having more questions that you want to do on one-on-one with one of our advisors, you can type in, consultation or questions, and we can reach out to you for that. If you're interested in that happiness webinar, type in happiness and we'll get you scheduled for that. Also, if you want to wait until July 30th to learn a little bit more, you're like, okay, this is a lot for me to take in right now, but I am interested in Play Attention, but maybe a little bit longer down the road, and you're interested in watching that July 30th webinar, so you can just type in Play Attention webinar, and we will get you registered for that, and that way you're registered, you're in there, you'll get the reminder since it is a couple weeks away. You'll have that, so if you're interested in the Play Attention webinar, you can just type in Play Attention webinar. So let me check here. I've got a lot of individuals that are interested in our upcoming webinars, and I have some individuals interested in our virtual summer camp, so that is excellent. It looks like that's all the questions I have. So I appreciate all of your time that we spent together today. Thank you so much for your time. Look for the email. It will be coming here in the next couple hours. Let's see here. Oh, I had a couple things pop up. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, Karen, I will talk to you. We can talk to you about Play Attention. Play Attention for a family, that's another thing. Play Attention isn't just for children. It's for children and adults. We can customize a program that works for the whole family. You know, sometimes that's really effective. We work with families that they'll eventually or first come to us and say, you know, my child's struggling with X, Y, and Z. We start having conversations and they're like, you know, I've always kind of struggled on this area, but I was never diagnosed. I'm not quite sure. And we can still, whether you or not you have a diagnosis, Play Attention's goal is to build cognitive skills to strengthen executive function. So even as an adult, even without a diagnosis, we can create a training plan that's going to work for you as well. And so we sometimes have the whole family going through the program together. And number one, that's really effective because it helps your kids stay a little motivated because they, again, are mirroring your behavior, but it's also building your skills also. And really across the board, we don't necessarily have to feel like we have a weakness. We all can build executive function. It's effective for all of us. Even if we feel like we perform pretty well, time management is always an area we can build, strengthen our memory as we get older. You know, there's some areas of our memory that start to decline. So even those types of areas, even if we don't feel like we have a decline. So yes, Karen, I will reach out to you and we can talk about a whole family plan. So thank you for that question. Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm getting a lot of thank yous, and I want to thank you. I know your schedules are busy, and it takes a lot to take an hour out of your day to spend with us, but we do appreciate it, and we really do enjoy working with all of you and sharing all of this great information with you. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful Wednesday, and we look forward to seeing you next week at our happiness webinar. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.